Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Canada Immigration Live Q&A, and we have another special guest with us. We are so excited to have John with us today to tell a little bit about his story. We're going to talk with John a little bit in the beginning, and then we're going to transition to a few little news items and ultimately get right back to that Q&A portion that you guys are all here for. So welcome, Alicia, and welcome, John. How are you guys doing?
Really well, Mark. And
Good,
yeah,
good.
John,
Oh, hi
thanks
there.
for joining.
No, it's my pleasure, and I'm really glad to be invited, and hopefully I can share my experiences with this great about you and Mark, Alicia. Yeah.
Perfect. So, John, maybe tell us about how you found us or why you came to talk to us in the first place.
Yes. So my experience was basically, I transitioned from a student to basically I did my graduate studies, and then I was on a postgraduate work permit, and my intention was to become permanent resident. So during that period, COVID had basically started, and there was a whole issue. That whole timeline was scattered, I think, for most of you as well. So as a result, my postgraduate work permit was expiring. I was really tense on what exactly to do. And as all of you know, there's so many different websites, forums, even like different immigration companies that can offer you advice and articles. But for some reason, one day I was scrolling through YouTube and I saw Mark and Alicia's face. And the fact that they had live events made me realize that this is something to take note of. And then the thing that finally clicked was when Mark and Alicia were updating and they were looking at IRCC's specific guidelines. So the ones that get updated and a lot of people miss. That's what that pushed me towards, I guess, enlisting your services. And as a result, I decided to work with Alicia in terms of basically filing an extension for my postgraduate work permit. But that was a temporary public policy. And then there were a lot of complications with visitor visa, as all of you know. Like you have to make sure your applications are consistent, and that's where Alicia and I worked closely on those applications. And once again, after that, the CAC draws, as all of you know, finally opened up. So that was a relief, and that was a whole process in itself as well. But my point being is that I can't stress this enough for everyone watching, is that um, I came here in Canada just to study and then to work and eventually live here. And I was confused as to who to ask help for. And many of you know that going onto forums and looking at random posts and people's experiences, you can draw a timeline within your head. But I can assure you, the consultations that Mark and Alicia offer are way above than what you read online and how you can actually feel mentally about yourself. Because just one consultation with Alicia reassured me that although it was a difficult journey, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I hope that captures like a brief summary of a long experience. Yeah,
That's awesome,
yeah,
John. Yeah, I mean, there is light at the end of the tunnel, right?
yes,
It's just a
yes,
matter of making sure that everything is gone through with a fine-tooth comb so that exactly as you said, there were issues in terms of prior applications you'd submitted, and then you realized, well, wait a minute, oh, on this date I put, on this application I put this date, and here's the reason why, and then I need to explain that. So, yeah, there's a lot to just make sure that you are cross-referencing and make sure that you understand all the moving parts because as John found out, there were a whole bunch of temporary public policies
yes,
and changes throughout this
yes,
process too that we had
yeah.
to navigate.
Yes, and one thing I would also like to note is that Mark has also developed a lot of great courses online. I think most of you should also remember that when you're signing up for these consultation sessions with Mark and Alicia, it's just not like a question and answer session. You have to prepare on your side as well. For many of you, I was a student myself. I would consider it like an application to university. So the more prepared you are with Alicia and Mark in developing your applications, the better they can assist you. And I do understand sometimes that you don't know what you're doing, but I can assure you that, for instance, for the CAC or applying for permanent residence, Alicia and I prepared that months in advance. We're talking, I guess, 4 or 5 months in advance. And police certificates and all the academic qualifications, I know they seem very straightforward, but there's always going to be a blip in the road. And my point being here again is that it takes a lot on the applicant side to prepare. And don't just expect Mark and Alicia to answer your questions. They can do the best only basically on how well you prepare for whatever consultation or any, I guess, meeting, if that makes sense. Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
that's, you know what, that's a really good point, John, too,
Yeah.
because, you know, when you look at the traditional way that representatives, you know, assist people,
Mhm.
if you're going through that process and they're not getting you to
Yeah.
do a bunch of work, like if
Yeah.
they're not asking a lot of questions
Yeah.
and, you know, their questionnaire that they give you is not really digging deep, then avoid them like the plague, because the application is only so, it's only going to be as good as the information that you have. A representative can't make it up. It's only based on what you provide. So you're right, John. When you have an individual that, you know, that puts in the work and really collaborates with us, and we put our heads together, yeah, you know, you can sleep easy at night.
Yeah.
That's,
No.
I guess that's what we sell is a
Yeah.
good night's sleep.
No, definitely, Mark. And just for your information as well, like I was with a representative before working with Alicia, and exactly what you said, Mark. I would ask him all these questions, RCC updates. Back then, there was no like tier system; it was just the NOC code. But I was asking him all these questions, and he wasn't aware. And many of you, I do understand sometimes like cost factors in your decision, uh, but I would also ask the question: would you rather be stressed? Knowing what's going to happen. And that's how I was with that previous representative. And then as soon as I went with Alicia, it was funny because the way I guess both you and Alicia operate is always being preemptive or working in hypothetical scenarios. So if anything shows up, I was always prepared, and I was reassured that it was not taken care of, but it was addressed. And I think your viewers should also be like, I guess, recognize that thing about your firm, if that makes sense. And your courses online as well helped a lot. I know most of us work, but those online courses, I highly recommend those. If they don't want to do consultation, the courses in themselves,
Yeah.
they go into detail, and you even gone further, Mark, to actually provide like a template. So it's more than enough for an applicant, in my opinion, though. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, it's interesting too. I'll just bring up the fact that Promise. So we were testing out our new interface for our live streams a few days ago, and Promise here, she came on and she said, "Mark, offer a discount on your Express Entry masterclass," and the links are all in the description below to all of our courses. But I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because these things are full of helpful information, and it's not just helpful, like it's a complete walkthrough step by step. And then when you add on consults, or if you choose to retain this, obviously, you know, there's more of a one-to-one process. But so she just came on here, I see, and posted, "Hey, Mark." Oh, so basically to close that loop, I said, okay, well, if you come on live right now as a guest and explain to me why I should give it to you for free, you know, I'll give you free access to the course. And so
Okay.
full credit to Promise. She connected in just like you are, John,
Okay.
but it was spontaneous,
Okay.
and she earned it. So, and this is her
Yeah.
response. She says, "Hey, Mark, thanks again for the opportunity. The masterclass is loaded." And so she's referring to the Express Entry course
Oh, okay.
material. So
Okay.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
also, I also wanted to highlight as well, Sheeta said that, John, I had a consultation with Cedric, and I feel you on that. So basically with, I think, just the comprehensive nature of what we're doing. So this is great. So where are things at right now? Let's
Oh, yes.
talk about how things wrapped up.
Right now, so Alicia and I actually prepared for my, I guess, the CAC program back in, I guess, April. And then eventually, I think I entered in the September draw. And surprisingly, the biometrics, the medicals were all like moving along. And then I got my ECOP. I don't know how to pronounce that, but the ECOPR document
Yep.
in January. So now it's just a card. So it was great news. And the fact was that Alicia actually estimated that it would fall within this timeline. And with me being pessimistic, and I'm sure all of you know the RCC processing times, I expected next year or somewhat. But then again, like I'm being really truthful here to your viewers, Mark and Alicia, that I'm really confident the documents that I prepared with Alicia was a result of how quickly the visa officer or whoever at IRCC was able to process it. Because once again, like both of you always mention in your stream, it's how strong your application is. Um, but then again, it's up to the individual at the end of the day. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Very
That's
exciting.
awesome,
Yes.
John. We're
Yeah.
very happy to welcome you as one of the newest Canadian
Right.
permanent residents. So
Thank you.
congratulations on your e-coper, and
Yeah.
we hope your PR card comes soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, John. We know
Yeah.
you've got work to get back to and everything. We really
Yeah.
appreciate you joining us and wish you all the very, very best.
Yes, thank you both, and hopefully, like more viewers or I guess clients come to you, because it saved me months of stress. Just to emphasize that to your viewers, and yes, I guess have a great day as well.
You bet.
Yeah.
And Sheeta
Thanks,
says
John.
congrats
All
to
right.
you.
All right.
Okay.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care. See you.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was kind of fun. Let's just make sure we got the right one here. Okay. All right. There. Perfect. Okay. I think we're connected here. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I think that's all on my end. All right. Okay, so we're good. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our Q&A portion, I guess. I've got this new interface here with my eCam. And Alicia, is there any overlay over your image? It's clear, is it? Okay, good.
Nope, it's clear. Yeah.
Okay, good. I've got some different notifications and banners and lots of things going on here. And it's, yeah, there we go. Lots of distractions on my screen. Okay, well, it's great to have clients come and join us. There's nothing better than being able to tell good, positive stories as opposed to the constant state of negativity that we've run through over the last number of years. So when you have, good things that happen to good people like John, we definitely want to share that. So
Yeah.
very, very cool.
Yeah. And yeah, there's some things that are happening in the immigration world, and I guess some good new developments in respect of the immigration tracker. So I think you've already talked a little bit about this, Mark, but you might want to emphasize it again.
Yeah. So for years, let's give them the background story behind this. So you guys will remember, if you've been involved in this for a while, that processing times have been the one single thing that most people have been fixated with since the beginning of express entry. And even from the very, very beginning days, people were very curious to see where in the process their applications were at. And so what do you do if you're not sure where to figure that out? What do you do? Well, people end up calling the call center and saying, hey, tell me where my application's at. Or they send web forms or things like that. And in the process of doing that, the reality is the government gets overwhelmed and inundated, and then they get frustrated. So they had this brilliant plan, probably about, how long ago is it? I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they had this brilliant plan to create a little timeline tracking tool right in your IRCC secure account. So you could log in and you could see where along the status bar your application was. But the reality is, it was freaking useless, because all the bar is it was set to run for 6 months, and the bar would just go across like this. So once you hit 3 months, every single bar was at halfway. And then once you got to 6 months and beyond, then it was like, oh, your application is going to take longer than normal. So it was not a client specific bar. It was just this little tool to trick people into thinking somehow, that this is where their application was really at. So it was not very effective. And then of course the pandemic hit, and then the huge, massive jump in processing times hit everybody. And the government continued to post processing times that said 6 months for express entry, which was really their service level standards and not the reality. And I remember having a conversation with the minister, which now I guess it's over a year ago now, And I said to him specifically, look, it serves no one any purpose to post processing times of 6 months, nor have a tracker on your web, in the client's IRCC secure account that doesn't actually give any meaningful information. And I said, you need to be honest so people can govern their lives accordingly, so they can plan and they can make decisions. And so without, it wasn't too long after that they then did start processing real times. And if we look at processing times right now for express entry, let's see if we can, might have to adjust the size of this here a little bit. Let's see if we can slide it over here. Yeah, let's adjust this just a little bit. Okay, so there we go. So if you look at processing times and we go to express entry, for instance, here, economic immigration, and then we'll go with the Canadian experience class. We'll say in Canada. And then we search, you can see it says 16 months here generally. And that was last updated just 2 days ago. So they're processing, and some people are actually caught in a vortex where applications are taking longer. We are not seeing our recent applications taking 16 months, but people still want to know on an individual basis where they're at. So what has transpired, Alicia? What do we have now?
Well, so as of yesterday, and this is a brand new announcement, and maybe you can pull up the notice from the IRCC notices page, but they have said, hey, good news. We have now rolled out an actual immigration tracker tool. And so this is hopefully going to help reduce the number of times that people feel like they need to call the call center or maybe send a web form, because honestly, there's nothing else to do right now. I don't blame people for being frantic about their applications when it's like sending it into the void, right? It's like it goes into a black hole and you don't know what happens and months go by. So finally, there's this new online applications status tracker, and it's going to be for express entry. So it'll be for federal skilled worker, federal skilled trades, Canadian experience class, as well as provincial nominees. So that is fantastic that it's also going to cover the PNP programs.
Yep. And this tracker, if you've been tracking a spousal sponsorship, this was first launched and beta tested with them. And I remember attending a technical briefing with IRCC where they showed how this was going to work for the spouses. And I think generally speaking, most people have been happy with this. Anything is better than the status quo. And now that they're expanding it, like Alicia indicated, to CEC and the PNPs and the other federal skilled and trade programs, this is, at least it gives people something that they can base their time on. And we're not going to go into how to log in and do all that kind of stuff. But when you do click, you need to create your own account, and it's linked to your specific your applicant information. And remember, you need to have filed your application and have an actual file number associated with it in order to go through here. And you can see here, even the link here, when you must create your own account, a principal applicant, including people you sponsor, representative. And then this is where you create an account. So you just click on this link right here, and it takes you here where you can create it. And then you can see the information that they ask: your UCI number, first, last name, date of birth, place of birth, country, and then you work through from there. So the goal is that people will have multiple application types. And so you're going to link your UCI to your profile, and then you're going to add in the various applications that you might have with immigration. So that's just a little sneak peek, and we'll learn more about it as people start to experience challenges, and there always will be, but we're happy to see this positive development, right, Alicia?
Yeah, no, it's exactly. It's much better than sending it into the void and having no ability to get some individualized feedback or kind of a snapshot of where your application is in time. So hopefully this is much more useful than a bar that just progresses based on 6 months, and that it'll actually give some real feedback.
Yeah. And the expectation is that people will be able to communicate as well through it. And we'll see how that plays out in the coming years versus using web forms that go into this big vat essentially, and the person has to manually link things up. So I think the goal is to be able to have communications going back and forth so that they're actually linked to your file. And so when you upload a document and then that IRCC asks you to provide, sometimes there are significant delays in the web form, and we've seen applications get rejected because it just wasn't matched up in a timely fashion. So we hope that this will also improve that reality.
And I do want to emphasize too, if people had a consultant or somebody else or an agent submit their application and they now want to take control of their application and use this tracker on their own, then you can still do that, right? So I refer a lot of people, Mark, back to your video on YouTube that you put out when you were doing a little information on how do you take your express entry application back? How do you take it back? And maybe we can put that in the show notes too, but just it is possible even if you had somebody else help you submit your express entry application, you can take back control. And so you can go on there, you can put a cancellation of use of representative, you can make sure that you have full control of your application again so that you can do your own online tracker application and you know exactly what's happening on your own file.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I want to let people know about a couple things as we're going forward here. I'm going to share my screen back here. Okay, so this is the YouTube channel. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, we actually have a poll that's running, okay? It says, when is the best time for hosting live Q&A in our Canadian Immigration Institute community? So we are running this poll here, and those of you who are unaware of the community, all you have to do is go down to the description and you'll see that you can access the community right here. So if you click on that link and open it up, it'll let you join the community group. And this is a kind of like a private Facebook group. Think of it that way, but not on Facebook. And so this is kind of our own little territory, our own real estate, if you will. And so you can join the community and you can read all about it. We've got a ton of things that we're going to be doing in there. Discussions on express entry, spousal, study permits, weekly live Q&As, and that's what we're polling right now. We have a chat room and even a timeline tracker that we're going to start for, you guessed it, processing times. So those are some of the things that we have. So make sure you slide over here, click on the link and join our community group. And today, if you're over on YouTube or you are watching on another platform, slide over, you can vote in our poll. So as we are going up here, you guys, seriously, 7 p.m. That means that I have to stay up in the evenings and do these, but that's okay. I'm going to honor it. So right now we've got, Tuesday, Igor. That's like cheap movie night for Tuesdays. Okay, well, we'll sort it out. Anyway, so Tuesday right now seems to be winning so far with 45%, but get on in there and vote in the poll, and we'll see at the end when we want to do our live Q&A in the group. And obviously, there's a lot fewer people that are connecting in the group if you get in early, and there's a greater likelihood that you will get your questions answered. All right. Okay, and I can see here, people are already cluing in what we're doing here. God, David, he says, first to vote in the poll, haha. And, every time I see this good vibes, it's just so hilarious. What the heck is that emoji for the good vibes? I've got to figure this out. There's, there. Okay, I'm going to show you guys. We're going to shift it over here. See, when I pull it up on the screen, it doesn't always take the actual emoji. So apparently this is it here. It's doing this. I always wonder what that was. Anyways, so yeah, check that out. Make sure you vote in the poll. And excuse me, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see how it all unfolds and develops. All right, let's see. We've got, let's dive into some questions here. We've got a bunch that are piling in. Remember, we are going to be selecting questions that we feel will give the best information to the most people. So if you have a question that's very specific, should I travel to X country while my application is being processed? Well, Alicia and we will ring that little triangle and then direct you back to Holthe Immigration Law, to our website, and tell you to book a consult, because we definitely don't want to be giving specific legal advice in this live stream when we don't have all the details and the facts. So we try to avoid that. Okay, let's start off the top here. This is from Akuba, and Akuba says, can a parent get an open work permit when accompanying a minor child coming to primary and high school in Canada? So studying. So can a parent who's accompanying a child who's studying get an open work permit? And that's actually a good question. Like it's a good question. Never been asked before, but what are your thoughts on that?
So immigration does have some information for parents accompanying a minor child in that the accompanying parent can come as a visitor, basically on a visitor basis in order to accompany that child to come to Canada as long as that child is a minor. And the same rules with temporary intent still apply. And so it is important to pay attention to the length of time that the parent is asking to accompany the child. But I have never seen immigration give an open work permit to a parent who is coming to accompany a minor child who's studying at the primary or highest level. Now, there are certain circumstances where parents are eligible for a work permit, and then the child can come as long as they get a study permit. And if they're at the primary or secondary level in high school in Canada, then they don't have to have a letter of acceptance to a particular university because they're not at that level yet. So, most of the time, most of the circumstances we normally see is the parent is coming, they have some sort of work permit eligibility, and then the child's accompanying them with a study permit application. But in this case, if your child has a study permit and has been approved, then normally the parent can only come as a visitor, and you've got to be careful about how long the parent is asking to stay as a visitor. It's got to be reasonable.
Exactly. Okay. Okay, here's a quick comment from Manoj. So Manoj says, Mark, you helped me to submit my application in November. Yes, indeed. The tracker seems useless. The status is the same since November after bio and medical update. Eligibility and background is not started. Well, understand you guys, that there's definitely going to be an evolving efficiency or effectiveness with this tracker. So we'll see. Alicia and I, we let you guys know when the government does something. And then it's up to you guys to report back to us on whether or not this stuff is actually working. So we'll make a note of that, Manoj. And yes. And Manoj says here, I also hear many get the portal email without their background and eligibility showing any progress in tracker, just moves to completed directly. Not surprising. And this is, it's not surprising at all. At
Yeah.
all.
Well, and for example, Mark, like we just had John on, and his
Mhm.
application was actually processed quite quickly. And so if you're looking at only a 4-month window from beginning to end, probably by the time immigration goes back to update their tracker, that person already has their e-copers. So,
Yeah.
for short processing times, the tracker is probably not going to be useful. But the good news is your application is processed. So probably this tracker is going to come in handy when you have longer processing times on your express entry applications.
Okay, next question here. Okay, let's see. This one's from Sheeta. Hi, Mark and Alicia from Halifax, CEC and FSW eligible. Primary occupation for EE profile is for Canadian work experience. If drawn for federal skilled worker, will I still be eligible even though the primary occupation is Canadian?
Yeah, and this is kind of a whole new world now that they're doing federal skilled workers specific draws. We've never had that before. So I can't see how you would possibly be ineligible because the points that you have claimed in your profile are based on your foreign work experience and your Canadian work experience. And that doesn't change just because you got a draw under the federal skilled worker category. As long as the points that you claimed in your express entry profile are correct, then the fact that you got drawn in an FSW specific draw should not in any way negate your Canadian work experience. As long as you actually do have Canadian work experience, you properly claimed it, you made sure it wasn't any unauthorized work, you made sure that that work was at least for 52 weeks, 30 hours per week, full-time, high-skilled, then that should not affect your ability to claim that Canadian work experience.
Yes. Okay, this is a good, successful thing. So Shanaz says, hey, Mark and Alicia, we're happy to announce that we received an ITA with 509 scores in the FSW draw. Well, we'll give you a celebration. Congratulations. That's great. Okay. Belen Wong says, hey, Mark and Alicia, quick question. If PR application was already submitted, do you recommend applying for the bridging open work permit or the post-grad work permit? What do you think, Alicia?
Well, and again, Belen, I mean, this is something that I wouldn't give advice on unless I can actually talk to you and understand your circumstances and exactly what's happening for you. But In general, as general information, there are sometimes options to apply for a postgrad work permit or maybe that bridging open work permit. A lot of people get confused on express entry because they think that maybe if they've just submitted an application into the pool, maybe they're eligible for a bridging open work permit. That is not the case. Make sure that you have to have actually received an invitation to apply. You have actually submitted your EAPR and it's a complete application. Only then are you eligible in certain circumstances to apply for that bridging open work permit. Be careful because sometimes if you were under, let's say, a PNP program or something that was employer specific, sometimes you can't actually ask for a bridging open work permit. You need to ask for a bridging work permit that's employer specific under one of the PNPs. So be careful on those bridging open work permits. If you are also eligible for a postgrad work permit, in general, I would normally recommend you apply for that postgrad work permit first because that one is time sensitive. So make sure that within 90 days of completing your studies, make sure your study permit was still valid, make sure that you've got all the documentation to support that you graduated from an eligible postgrad work permit eligible program at a DLI. Submit that application for your PGWP, which will give you that ability to start working full time the day you submit your PGWP application, continue to gain your Canadian work experience. And then if and when your PGWP is going to run out and you still maybe don't have an answer back on your PR application, then you can submit your bridging open work permit if you're eligible for it.
All right. This next question is from 60 Seconds for the Soul. That sounds intriguing. Hi, Mark and Alicia. When will the minister announce the categories for Bill C-19? Hoping this week in February. What do you guys think? And someone also brought up, Alicia, that they had some intel that the selection, his first selection, would be this week. And I haven't heard anything about that, but I don't propose, I don't purport that I have every channel monitored that's coming from Ottawa and all the various stakeholders. But what do you think? We know it's sometime in the spring, Alicia.
Sometime in the spring,
Technically, it's still winter, so that's why I was a little bit dubious of that statement. But hey, everybody likes to be the one to break the news, right? So
yeah, maybe they're going with Groundhog Day. Maybe they're thinking that because the groundhog in Alberta predicted an early spring, but I think all the groundhogs east predicted a late winter. So I don't know. I think it might be a bit ambitious to hope that the minister is going to announce targeted draws or reasons for why they're doing specific draws this week. Technically, the spring starts in April, so maybe they will tell us by April. But you know what? Who knows? Like that whole federal skilled worker draw last week, and they've mixed up the days. It's not on Wednesdays anymore. Now it's on Thursdays. Maybe we'll see a draw in the next half hour. Maybe they'll wait another week and they're going to stagger it every 2 weeks. It's just everything seems up in the air right now. So my general recommendation would be if you are eligible for express entry, put in a profile and you hopefully are going to maximize your chances at getting an invitation to apply depending on whatever criteria they come up with.
Excellent. All right, let's go to a more serious note. So Eric says, I have a misrepresentation problem to the US, but my organization whom I work with wants me to go and study to come back home. Please, do I stand a chance to be given a study permit? So I'm going to assume that's to Canada. So he wants to study in Canada, but he has a misrep problem in the US. So I'm going to ring that bell. And absolutely, Eric, I think you asked a question similar to this in my live yesterday, but really book a consult so that we can look at this in detail, Eric. It's not something that we can address here, especially given the complexity of what you're describing there. What is misrepresentation? What do you mean by that? What actually happened? What is your plans in terms of study permits? And it's your organization wants you to do it. Well, how is that all fitting into the mix with them putting pressure on you to do that? So those are all factors that we definitely want to address when we have an opportunity to really flush things out. All right. Naveen says, hello, Mark. I came to Canada on a study permit in 2021, and currently I'm on a postgrad. I also submitted an express entry application, but forgot to mention that I visited Mexico for only 1 day. Is that a problem? What do you think, Alicia?
So I'm assuming that you've actually completely submitted your express entry application, that you submitted a full EAPR, and that was actually, you got an invitation to apply. Of course, if you're just at the profile stage, then they don't normally ask you about your visits. So probably you've submitted it. But if there's nothing else that you can do right now other than do the web form, I would say go and do a web form and update the fact that on your travel history, there is another visit to Mexico. Tell them which date you went, which date you returned, and apologize for making the error. So as long as there were no inaccuracies in your kind of statutory declaration questions, right? Like hopefully you were never refused a visa to any country. Just if you go in and do that web form update and say, hey, here's another country that I traveled to for only one day, and just correct the fact.
All right. Next up is Jurgon. He says, hello, Mike and Alicia. Hey, I answer to just about anything. Do I need to, especially when it's marked right on the screen. Anyways, do I need to request cancellation of my bridging open work permit as I already got eCoper? By the way, thank you to Cedric and to you as well. So I think Jurgon probably watches Cedric's lives as well. So what do you think?
Nice.
Do you need to go in and request cancellation?
Yeah, so if you've got your eCoper and you want to save yourself a little bit of processing fees, and they might be wanting to process your bridging open work permit and you're already a landed permanent resident, then you might as well go in and you can ask for that bridging open work permit to be canceled. If they don't actually start processing your application, they will likely refund you the processing fees. So, hey, you might as well get a few dollars back, and you don't need to have your bridging open work permit continue to be processed and gumming up the works. So it helps everybody.
Okay, let's see here. So Sheeta says CEC, let's see. Yeah, we covered that one, I think, already. If John first, will I still be eligible? Yeah, we covered that one. Okay, and then we have, oh, here's the one, a follow-up from Promise. She says, I will join again with my own testimony. Hopefully Fraser considers draws 2 steps below the last draw, 489. You are so close. You are so close. So the question becomes, yes, will our dear minister here, let's see if he visits us. I don't think he'll visit us here. I got to adjust. Oh no, he was there. He appeared very carefully. There he is. Okay, so the minister, yes. Are you going to do it, minister? That's the question. Okay, here he's joining us right in the middle here. So, Minister Fraser, Unique wants to know if you're going to lower the score to 489 so that she can get drawn. She's got the phenomenal. Oh, there he goes. Yes, he's bowing. You've got the phenomenal powers now as a result of Bill C-19, and you can do anything. So there we go. That's pushing the wrong button. See, I think the minister is getting back at me here for making him answer these difficult questions. So for Promise, maybe the minister for you, what he'll do is he'll say, for anyone with a first name that is so cool to be Promise, I will grant an ITA just for them. Maybe he'll do that. Maybe. All right. Thanks, Minister. Appreciate you jumping in for us here. There he goes. Okay. So yes, we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'd love to have you join us, Promise. And yes, Promise is her name. Promise Unique. Interesting. Okay, next one is from Sogat. He says, hey, Mark and Alicia, your videos are really helpful. Always trying to butter us up. Okay, and buttering up does help. Okay, I'm preparing my docs to submit. I'm a CEC candidate. Quick question, should I upload any additional documents with the job reference letter?
Mm-hmm. And I guess there's a few ways to read that question, Sogat, but normally when we're looking at bundling those job experience letters, reference letters, confirmation of employment, it is important that you're covering all the bases. So you want to make sure that you are getting a letter from your employer that meets all the requirements. And so take a look at the completeness check requirements for what is required for a job reference letter. Make sure that it's on company letterhead. Make sure it states your full name. Make sure it's dated. Make sure it has the start date. Make sure it has your wage. Make sure it has salary and benefits. Make sure it has your hours. Make sure it has your job duties, and make sure that your job duties are in line with the lead statement and the majority of the main duties for the National Occupation Classification Code that you are claiming. So that's one thing. Yes, that's the job reference letter. But also, it is very helpful to also include confirmation that you have been working in that job. And depending on which country, if you're looking for Canadian work experience, then you would have tax documentation to prove that you were working in that job. So if you've been here for more than a year, if you are claiming CEC, then you're going to make sure you upload a notice of assessment and your T4 statements. If you were fired or left that job, your employer in Canada has an obligation to provide you with what's called an ROE, or record of employment. So make sure that you have documentation to prove that you were employed legally. And also it's helpful to include some pay stubs. So a selection of pay stubs, usually from the start and the middle and the end of your work period there. So those are things that we normally recommend are uploaded as part of your proof of employment.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things, this is also something that we cover. Let me just pull this up here. We've talked a lot about this before, but this is what we cover in the Express Entry course. And you can see that we have a specific lesson that alone is on records of employment. And with that, we've got a ton of different resources, including, checklists. What if I can't get a letter? Sample tools, Knox selection tools, all these kinds of things, as well as a whack of sample letters that are all available for you. So make sure that you go in and check that out. Okay, let's flip back here and we'll see if we can, my system, for whatever reason, I think it must be this new update, is just a little bit slow flipping back and forth. Okay, let's see who we've got next on our list. So Sagat, thank you for that question. Okay, here, this is from Mame. Is there any information on the TR to PR stream? This is a very open-ended question. Maybe I'll tackle this one, Alicia. The reality is it's closed. We don't think it's going to open up necessarily again. The minister's got powers and he can do whatever he wants, I guess. But at this stage, the processing, they have all the way through to the end of 2023 to process the last of the TR to PR stream and have people come in. At least that's the year that they hope to wrap up the previous one, but it is closed. I had a consult today with someone who, actually it was last night. I had a whack of consultations yesterday. Someone who's now eligible because they've been sitting around waiting for their TR to PR to be processed to utilize the bridging open work permit to extend their permit. So that's about the only thing that's available with the TR to PR right now. And we'll just see what the minister does in terms of his magical powers. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Chloe says, hey, Mark and Alicia, when do you think they will start phase 2 of open work permits for family dependents? In other words, phase 2, low skilled tier 4 and 5. Any thoughts on that, Alicia? Once again, we're speculating here, but I don't have a phone number, a direct phone line to Minister Fraser anymore. So we've got to use our ingenuity here to prognosticate. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they are rolling it out in phases. So you're right, Chloe. You have the first tier, and then we've got now the second phase, and then they've outlined a few subsequent phases. So they're presumably going to go in order, but people have been waiting for this for a very long time, right? We're really hoping that it'll open up the labor market and the ability for people to be able to work in Canada legally who are accompanying primary applicants. So hopefully they will do this sooner rather than later. This seems like low-hanging fruit for them. This seems like something that they can do relatively easily in order to be able to give people more ability to work. However, at the same time, as soon as they open it up, they know that they're going to have a whole bunch of immigration officers processing those work permit applications. So I guess that might be the trade-off, is they're trying to figure out what their capacity is given the fact that they still have a significant backlog. So I would say it might be another few months.
I think that's probably accurate. Okay. Okay. Masabin says, CC Outland, does IRCC not have exit immigration data? I got an ADR saying that their records show that my status expired and I didn't leave Canada, whereas I left Canada before my status postgrad work permit expired. So this one absolutely, Masabin, is a consult. So this is something that you definitely want to take serious and understand. The easiest way to do it is come over here, click on speak to a lawyer, and you can connect right in here, book a consult with Alicia or any of the other lawyers, depending upon the availability. But I strongly encourage you to book a consult because this is something you do not want to take lightly, especially if the information they have is just wrong. So any other thoughts on that, Alicia?
Start gathering your evidence right away. So make sure that if you did leave Canada, find the boarding pass, find the confirmation of your flight, find, some sort of documentation from your credit card records to show that you left Canada on the day that you said you left Canada. And if you have that, additional document request and that has a deadline on it, you want to make sure to meet that deadline. Make sure that you respond within the time that they've given you to respond, because you don't want to have misrepresentation or inadmissibility kind of pursued if you've got evidence to show that you had left when you said you left.
Okay. This is a very common, we get a lot of consultations with this, Richard. So Richard Watts says, hi guys, I'm 32, bachelor's degree, 10 years software engineering experience, but CRS is only around 420. Stupid. Work experience should be worth more. Are my Canadian dreams over?
And I'd say the good news about all this uncertainty with these targeted draws is, Richard, your dreams may not be over, because the minister can do whatever immigration says is going to be an economic priority for that express entry draw. And so maybe they'll say, hey, I want somebody who has 10 years of software engineering experience, and that knock. And there you go. Maybe you get an ITA. So in the old world, it was straight CRS. If you had a CRS score above or below, and it depends on the tie-breaking rule in terms of when you created your profile, but other than that, it was a pretty level playing field. And now we've got a whole bunch of uncertainty, and we don't know what's going to happen and how these targeted draws are going to work. But I guess the upside of that is that it gives people an opportunity to possibly come to Canada and get their permanent residency who may not have been able to do so under the old system.
Perfect. Chloe says, thanks for the answer. All right. Next question is from Mohammed, and he says, I have a US F1 visa refusal due to administrative processing. How it will impact my PR application?
Yeah. And so again, I mean, this is something where, Mohammed, we'd want to talk with you and just understand specifically in a consultation what's going on, why, what happened with that administrative processing, how long ago was it, have you disclosed that in the past? And so this is normally the issue, is if you have some sort of refusal or deferral or something where your visa was not granted, you do want to describe that and explain it if you are applying for basically any type of application to Canada, whether it's a temporary or a permanent resident application.
Okay. Richard says, appreciate you guys doing these Q&As. By the way, keep up the awesome work. Thank you, Richard. That gives us motivation to keep doing it. Sharon says, any update on the parent-grandparent program? I just had a consult with clients today talking about that. Mothers here, they're trying to figure out what options they have. They expressed an interest back in 2020, haven't been drawn yet. At least they're in there. So if IRCC keeps fishing from that old pool, they have a shot versus people now who want to get in. Don't even have a clue what's going to happen. In their case, they actually filed an H&C as well, Alicia, and they didn't seek any legal help to do it, and it very quickly got rejected. So we're going to look and see what they did and maybe take another kick at the can. But any thoughts on the parent-grandparent program?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, this is a really difficult program. So the parent and grandparent sponsorship program, the Canadian child or grandchild has to make sure that they qualify. So they have to basically make sure that they can prove that they're meeting low income cutoff guideline plus 30%. There were some variations during COVID, but to be safe, make sure you're meeting the low income cutoff guideline plus 30% for your family unit, anybody who's dependent upon you, plus your parents and grandparents, whoever you want to sponsor. Now, unless you actually manage to get in that eligibility kind of form back in 2020, they have only drawn from that old 2020 pool for the last 2 years, for 2021 and for 2022. They have not said what they're going to be doing for 2023. Last year, they only announced it in the fall. So we don't know so far what's going to happen with the parent and grandparent program.
Okay, next question. This one comes from Manasi. Says, hi, Mark. I hope you're well. I received an email last week from IRCC regarding medical exemption as I'm inland and asked to add a UMI number if I've done medical in the last 5 years. Not sure where to add on express entry. So if you're going to update, where would you, and we don't know, Manasi, it's what stage you're at. So if you filed or if you haven't filed, but you want to try to tackle that one, Alicia?
Yeah, I mean, probably if they're asking you to actually include that number, then if you haven't filed an application yet, the only way you have to do it is, or if you have filed an application yet, the only way to do it is with a web form, and you can upload it via web form and show that you have that UMI number. If you actually have a copy of that 1017B form, the one that has your photo and little kind of barcode across the top, you can upload that as an attachment to the web form. But yeah, hopefully you can go through and check and make sure that you fit the policy requirements for not needing a new medical under the current policy requirements regarding medicals for inland applicants.
Okay, next question is from Lola. And she says, hey, Mark, please, how many months of statements is needed for express entry proof of funds? Also, can the money be sent from my husband's account to mine when it's time to print out? Also, how long does the money need to be probably in the account? I'm assuming is what she was trying to say. So this is a classic express entry one that goes right to the heart of what we cover in the express entry course. But Alicia, what are your thoughts for Lola here?
So Lola, take a look at what is listed in the proof of funds requirements when you go to the express entry kind of program page. And it's going to tell you that you need to make sure that those proof of funds are the dollar figure depending on the number of family members that you have. And so take a look at those low income cutoff guidelines, or the minimum necessary funds for your family unit. And then this is only required, of course, for federal skilled worker applicants. So if you're a CEC applicant, this should not be applying to you. But if you're FSW, then proof of funds does apply. So take a look how many family members are in your family. So you plus whoever else you are bringing with you, and what they accept as proof. So make sure that those funds are readily accessible. And if you are getting that money from your husband and you don't have a joint account, then you should be getting a letter from them. If your spouse is a non-accompanying spouse, then you'll want to get for sure clarification on what's happening. Yeah. So you've got to prove that you've got access to the money, or you can get a gift deed that your spouse can actually deposit those funds into your account, but make sure to get a notarized gift deed. So these are the requirements on how long you have to have it. So when you apply and if they issue you your permanent resident visa. So this is a long period of time. So it's from all the time from when you apply all the way until you get a decision on your application for express entry. Generally, we would normally say to put at least 6 months, because the letter that they say that you need from the bank needs to show your average balance for the past 6 months prior to the date that you are applying. So make sure that you've put that history in there. And if you didn't have the money up until now, you're going to want to explain how your husband had the money, show that it's coming from his account to your account, and have a gift deed if you guys are not on a joint account.
Yes. All right. Satnam says, I have 486 CEC points. Any chance of getting an ITA by March? My work permit is going to expire November 2023.
Yeah, and this is tricky. We don't know. We would hope so. We hope that those CRS are going to come down, but if they do a no program specified draw, then it's probably going to bump back up, because now we're looking at CEC candidates as well. So it is tricky. I did write a big long article on our blog about what to do if your work permit's going to expire. So take a look at those things. See if you can potentially talk to an employer about whether they would be willing to advertise and recruit and maybe seek an LMIA to fill the position if you are working in Canada and they are willing to go through that process of trying to find a Canadian. If they can't find a Canadian, asking for an LMIA so that they can offer you a job. And then you would do an application to change your work permit to an employer specific work permit prior to your current document expiring. So that's normally your best bet to try to make sure that you stay in Canada. If your employer is able to get that LMIA, then and you're a named employee on there, the good news it's also going to bump your CRS score up 50 points because now you're looking at getting an arranged employment offer or a job offer that qualifies for arranged employment points.
Okay. Arsoy says, please, is $15,000 plus tuition of 1-year program plus $25,000 the end of service when I resign plus $25,000 upcoming salary enough for one study permit applicant as proof of funds? So this one, I'll just remind everybody that I also have my brand new study permit course that I've created. And in here, we cover a ton of things related to the study permit process. So one of them, of course, is assessing what you might need for funds and what is sufficient funds, because it's one of the significant and main grounds of refusal in the context of a study permit application. So I don't know how much money this person's talking about. Like they've got 15,000 plus another 50,000 plus they pay tuition. Well, for a 1-year program, that probably seems to me like it's in the range of what you might need to have. But it's different for every person. So any thoughts on that, Alicia?
Yeah, it's also tricky so it seems like the $15,000 plus the paid tuition fee is there, but everything else is future, right? And so then it becomes, okay, well, if you've paid your tuition fee for the first year, that is the minimum requirement normally, that you've got that paid full tuition. And then for one family member, they normally say you've got to show at least $10,000 of accessible Canadian funds for living expenses and books and everything else that you're going to need to come here, so flight expenses and all that. However, it depends on what you are putting in your study plan. It depends on what you can prove to show your temporary intent and how you're a legitimate student. And so if a lot of that money isn't here yet, then immigration will normally want to understand how you've been supporting yourself in the past. So lay it out, have a really good letter of intent. I helped develop the tool for that. It's pretty darn comprehensive.
It's a
And
great
so
one.
it's in Mark's course.
Yep. And actually, why not just show you guys what we got here? Let me just pull it up quick. If I can find it. Let's see here. Oh, of course. I never invited myself. I was going to show you a little sample, but we won't today. But yes, there's a lot of really, really helpful information in there. Okay, let's see what's next. So yes, so we've got Lola, and there's a couple others saying thank you, which we appreciate. Valletta says, love your channel. I received an in-Canada approval letter for an open work permit. While I wait for the permit to arrive at my address, can I work on the approval letter? That's a great question.
And this is always tricky because the approval letter doesn't have all the details. So we don't know who the employer is that's specified on there. We don't know what the location is that's specified on there. So normally the open work permit approval letters will give you the document number, and sometimes they will give you the validity dates. But other than that, you don't have the key details. And sometimes immigration makes mistakes, or they may have misinterpreted what you asked for when you made the application. So technically, it is safest to wait until you actually get that physical document in your hands and you can confirm that everything is as it should be. So it's tricky. This is one of those gray zones.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we are just about at the very end, and I know Sahil's been anxiously posting and reposting, and so Alicia and I definitely don't have every answer to every question for every program in Canada. You're asking anyone applying for OINP after notification of interest with CEC profile has to show ROE for foreign employers. Normally, that is not the case. And if you're talking about a record of employment for foreign employers, the hard thing is I don't know whether you mean like a reference letter or some form of tax document. And part of the reason I skipped past your question, my friend, is because I didn't know what you meant. And so a record of employment is a specific tax document that employers have to submit when someone is no longer working for them. But you've specifically identified for foreign employers. So I don't know what you mean. So if you're wondering, some people, why Mark hasn't selected your question, it's because it's a little bit unintelligible. So I don't know, Alicia, if you have any thoughts to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, so normally the ROE is a requirement for Canadian employers, but maybe you're saying that there is some sort of requirement to show foreign employment proof, and that might include a number of things depending on which country you are working in. So if you do have tax documentation from that foreign country, if you have a work visa from that foreign country, if you have pay stubs from that foreign country, those might be things that you can do to add to your letter of employment from your prior employer.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in today. It was another awesome live Canada Immigration Live Q&A. As always, it's sponsored by Holthe Immigration Law. And a big part of that is right here, all of these programs, the study permit courses. And if you go to our website for the Canadian Immigration Institute, you will see that we have all of the courses that are listed here. Express entry, study permit, spousal are our core courses. And of course, within our firm, Holthe Immigration Law, if you go to our About Us page, you can learn all about our approach, which we think is pretty cool for how we act for our clients. And we love working directly with them, no middle people. And as you go in and you look at the, when you click on Speak to a Lawyer, and on a lot of our pages, you'll see that there's a lot of, there's a lot of feedback, and you can see just popping up here from our clients that also like that ability to talk to us and not through some middle person, and actually get help directly from us. So we've structured it in a way to work with people, to leverage off of them putting their effort in, as John talked about at the beginning. And we want to thank John for joining us. He was a past client who had a really wonderful result. Alicia was assisting him, and he came on to tell his story. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, slide over and take a look at that. And yeah, things are moving forward. I want to share one last little thing. If you go up here to our podcast, and I think there's a link, I'm not sure if there's a link in the description for the YouTube channel. I can't remember if we have the podcast on here. Canadian Immigration Podcast. Yes. So the links to the podcast are right here. So now that you guys are traveling back to work, this might be something that you're interested in. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to our podcast. And Alicia and I have just recently launched episode 100. We're pretty excited about that. A brand new business immigration series. So how to hire a foreign worker. And we're going to cover all aspects of the LMIA process, and then drift into the International Mobility Program as well. So you can watch it on Spotify, our website, iTunes, wherever you watch your podcasts. And we'd love for you to tune in and listen in as you're on the road or multitasking, whatever you're doing. Maybe you're doing the dishes. Who knows? But you can have us everywhere. All right. Thanks, Alicia. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care.